Hey everybody, Mike Rollins here again with the third of my series of interviews with candidates for the chair of the Texas Democratic Party to fill the vacancy created by Gilberto Hinojosas' resignation effective March 29th, which is now a little over 2 weeks away. So joining me today, I'm very pleased to have Lillie Schecter, former county chair of Harris County. Say hi, Lillie.
Hey, y'all. I'm happy to be here. Mike, thank you for doing this today.
Oh, thank you for coming on. As with the other candidates we've had, have like to take just a minute or so at the beginning to kind of introduce you a little more in depth about who the candidate is. Lillie is a seventh generation Texan and native Houstonian. When she was growing up, her grandmother served as Hood County tax assessor. And so she had got the Democratic Party in her blood going quite a ways back. In middle school, she was knocking on doors, hammering stakes into signs, which is something I think all Democrats have done at one time or another, working the phones, knocking on doors. Her mother was the Democratic Party chair, and that was in Harris County, wasn't it?
hmm
Okay. And she's been surrounded by politics all of her life. In 2009, she founded her firm Bayou City Strategies, where they help candidates and organizations build effective fundraising and organizing strategies, which are like the key things that the party's supposed to do. After the 2016 election, like a lot of people, she wanted to fight back against Trump and make sure the Republicans never won Harris County again. So she ran for Harris County Democratic Party chair, won, and helmed their efforts through the 2018 and 2020 cycles. During that time, together they raised over $5.5 million, engaged a record number of grassroots volunteers, flipped seats in both 2018 and 2020, swept Harris County, and helped elect Lena Hidalgo as county judge, among other things. So Lillie comes to us with a whole lot of experience, and I have to say that from my 8 years serving as chair in Collin County, I have tremendous respect for anybody who would take on chairing a county as large as Harris County and doing it for 5 years successfully. So kudos to you, at least for that, Lillie.
Thank you.
So, as I've given the other introductions for these interviews, I find the constraints of the 1 minute debate forum format really don't serve anybody very well. They don't give a very deep picture of the candidate, what makes them tick, really don't give anything any more time to get into issues or plans or strategies other than more than sound bites. I mean, too often I listen to these things and, the question brings up a problem and the candidate has 1 minute to say, yeah, that's a problem. And they don't offer a solution. So you are one of the few candidates running who actually has a pretty extensive website going into what your plan is. So I wonder if you could kind of walk us through what you have in mind, starting with what you see the problems of the party are, and go from there. I would like to say before we get very far into this, with something I mentioned in the other interviews, that I mean, to me right now, this whole exercise, electing a state chair, feels a little bit surreal with the madness going on in Washington, where you don't know what the hell is going to happen the next day. I've kind of trained myself to stop being surprised, but still, it's like sometimes I just shake my head or beat my head against a wall. While all that is going on, we kind of feel like we're internally focused navel gazing right now, looking at the internal problems of the Texas State Party. But, you know, as small of a piece of the puzzle it is an important piece moving forward. So it feels a little bit not focused where we need to be right now, but it's something we do really need to do. So I'd like people I like candidates, to kind of answer questions with that in mind and for the viewers to kind of keep that in mind as we go through that. So that said, how about your plans for the party? What do you think are our biggest problems and what do you need to do, think we need to do?
So I think that I want to take a step back and and kind of ground the whole conversation and what I see the purpose of the Democratic Party in the state of Texas
That'd
is.
be great.
Let's start with there because then I think that kind of builds out on, and I can explain my plans on where I think the party should go. But at the end of the day, we live in a state where we have no power, and we live in a country where we have no power. There are no checks and balances. There are very few checks and balances on the Texas legislature, and there are no checks and balances right now at the federal level. So what I see the purpose of the Democratic Party is to elect Democrats up and down the ballot so that we can push back. Our entire government system is one created on checks and balances. And what I believe the party should be doing is electing Democrats up and down the ballot so that we can push back on make sure that Republicans cannot run carte blanche over our state. They cannot, use our taxpayer dollars to pay for private schools. And we really have to have a voice in the system. And I think the same thing is true at the federal level. So everything we're doing is geared towards winning elections. So in my mind, from that point, then you start to create a plan and what we need to do in the state to win those elections. One of the things that I think you do in any business, when you are looking at a business and you're trying to figure out where to go, the next steps of the business, what's the next 10 years going to look like, you do an evaluation. So my first thing I want to do is a 360 evaluation on what's working and what's not working. And that has to be a very honest conversation about the good and the bad and the ugly. And we have to be willing to have that conversation because we can't ever fix what's broken if we don't acknowledge things are broken. We also, at the same turn, need to acknowledge that there are great things happening at the party and that it's not everything negative, but there are, the party has, just like any organization, any person has strengths and weaknesses. So we need to really dig into those and we need to do an evaluation of everybody and everything at the party, whether it's revenue stream, communication platforms, staff, SDC structure. We just need to do a 360 the voter file, 360 evaluation on where we are today as Texas Democrats. And while we're doing that, because I believe we can multitask, and we all do it all day, every day, I think we also need to be growing our war chest, building out an electoral plan for 26, 28, 30, and 32, and making sure that we are working with local leaders in order to do those things. While we're doing that, we also need to do a deep dive into messaging to see where we are, where the Democratic Party is with our voters and how we communicate better with our voters and meet them where they're at. So the plans that I've laid out on the website are pretty comprehensive. They're not just a small project. It's a lot of really big projects, but I think we're at an inflection point now at the party, on campaigns, as a Democratic Party, that we need to really have an assessment of what we're doing well and what we're not doing well, and then how we build out to grow. Because if we don't start winning elections in 26, look at our statewide opportunity in 28, sit at the table during redistricting in 30, then 32, we will not be, I don't think the Texas Democratic Party will have any power in the state of Texas if we aren't making incremental change from 26, 28, 30, and 32 to where 32 we're in play at the presidential level, because I think we're going to need that for the next Democratic president as well. So I think everything that I'm focused on is to build
You
those
just
single out. Huh?
excuse me, you just froze up on me.
Oh, is that better?
Yeah, yeah. And
Okay.
it fades in and out.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Everything we're doing is to increase Democratic turnout so that we can start building power in the state of Texas. So I've laid out plans on the website that are very large projects, I think, but they're stuff that we need to do in order to make sure that the party is the strongest party we can possibly be. And I can recap that if you'd like. So, an evaluation first and foremost to see 360 evaluation with an honest conversation about where we are and where we need to go. And then looking at building a war chest, which I have plans for that as well.
Mhm.
A deep communications messaging research project, which I have plans for that as well. And then an electoral plan that we need to lay out from 26 to 32, using some of the smartest people we have in the state of Texas to build out that plan and identify the wins that we need along the way to get there.
Right. So I think for the candidates who have actually thought this through, and thought about it very much.
Mhm.
I think most of them would not find much, if any, disagreement with what you just said. Um, I think perhaps, well, let me ask it this way. How would you differentiate yourself in that? Given that I think most of them would agree with you, what do you bring to the table that, in your view, that would make you more capable of actually delivering on all of that?
Yeah, I think it's a variety of things that make me a little bit different. I am the only candidate that's raised $5 million for the party already through the work that I did at the Harris County Democratic Party. And I'm the only candidate who's raised hard dollars for the party at that amount. I'm also the only candidate that's worked with every level of elected officials and candidates across the state of Texas, from school board to federal level. I'm also only candidate that has a winning track record running a local party that's larger than 26 states. So when I was the Harris County Democratic Party chair, I had 400 and something CEC members. So I walk into the door already recognizing how powerful and important the committees are and know how to work with them. So I think that's just one of the things that separates me. And the other thing I will say is that, you know, uh, not just the $5 million I've raised for the Harris County Democratic Party. In my career, if I start to add up all the different campaigns and fundraising efforts I've worked on, we're pushing $35 million that I've raised over my career. So I understand donors across the state and nationally, and I have a better understanding of kind of what they're looking for. One of the other things that sets me apart is that I work with staff at the local level. I work with consultants. I work with donors. I work with elected officials. So I sit in every level of those meetings. And so, this in 2020, in 2022 and 2024, and when I was party chair before that, there were conversations that campaigns will have with donors, which is a different conversation that could be happening on the ground with the staff members. And because I
Mhm.
am someone who travels between all those worlds, I think I have a better understanding of what we need in the infrastructure, what staff needs to be supported at the staff level, what elected officials want to see from the party, and what donors are looking for as well. So I think that my experience just is a much broader when it comes to the political world than anybody else's.
Okay. I think that's a pretty good statement. A fair case to make. Um, in looking at how some of the support is shaping up in some of the early polling and just the people I talk to, it's interesting. I mean, Democrats are Democrats, politics, politics. It seems that Kendall Scudder has a base of support in Dallas and East Texans. Um, Patsy Wood Martin, I'm not sure she has a natural constituency anywhere. Unfortunately, she just, hasn't been in party politics that long. And it seems like everybody I know from Houston, who's anybody, all support you. So, and I can't see that. Well, let's see. Delia Sims has, I never get her name right. I'm sorry. I
William
apologize to
Becker.
her. Yes, has a base of support in Denton County, but doesn't seem to have much beyond that. So, uh, I think there's a challenge then in that, in for the people in the other parts of the state who don't know the candidate outside their region.
Mhm.
How do I guess I'm concerned about just having them all really get to know everybody, and assuming, somebody outside of their particular region gets elected, it's establishing the relationships that will really help us move forward. I mean, for example, Kendall's been on the SDEC for a long time, not forever by any means, but, 3 or 4 terms, has a lot of support there. But then again, you know, that's that section of the SDEC. So I guess that's kind of a comment, but also a question around uh, given that's kind of where we are, how do we build a broader coalition or more cohesiveness in the party?
I think that's a great question. I think that one of the things I've really been focused on as I've been meeting people around the state is that there are very separate apparatuses in the party, and it feels like the SDC is separate from the county party chairs and
Oh,
separate
yeah.
from the staff, separate from the elected officials. And I think we have to take a step back. So I'm going to answer a question, but also offer take a step back and remind people that we're all Texas Democrats, and it's not the label of the rural, urban, suburban, SDC party staff versus county chairs versus precinct chairs. At the end of the day, we're all Texas Democrats who all are showing up because we want to do the work. And doing the work is the thing that's been driving me my entire career. So when you see people that are supporting me coming out of the Harris County region, or even people around the state, like Vicente Gonzalez in South Texas, I'm getting that support because I've done the work and I've showed up and I've created teams of people who have put together winning electoral plans. One of the things I've been trying very hard to do during this campaign is to talk to every single member of the SDEC, either in person or over the phone, but it's also traveling to all the regions across the state, going to South Texas and sitting with, the chair of the Hidalgo County Democratic Party and the executive director of the Cameron County Party and talking to Richard and Ben. And so I can really learn, and Cassandra down there, really learn what their issues are and how they approach things differently than the way we do in Harris County, because Harris County is a unique beast amongst itself. We are a very
Yes.
large county. We are a very diverse county, recognizing that there are suburban and urban counties that need just as much attention around the state. And one of the things that I've been doing is trying to listen to the local leaders to get an understanding of where they are. Talking to the Taylor County Democratic Party activists who came in from Abilene to the Lubbock forum, talking to them about what it's like to be a Democrat in Taylor County versus Harris County. Their experience is radically different than mine. Then going over to Lubbock and talking to Kim and Josh and Kyle and people there, talking to them about what their experience is and their expertise being Lubbock County Democrats. And so I think one of the things is first listening to local leaders, and then engaging them in real concrete conversations about how we can make the party better. One of the things I've been trying to do as I travel places is also figuring out resources, whether, it's not just financial resources, it's also people resources, technology resources, figuring out ways to connect people around the state so that people don't feel like they're so alone in some of this work. One of the things I was talking to Kay about, Kay Parr, about is, she's doing county chair recruitments all across the state. And so am connecting her to the executive director of the Harris County Democratic Party so that we can see if our phone bankers in Harris County can help Kay reach out into surrounding counties to make sure that they're helping recruit people to come in for county party chair trainings. So I think it's about making these connections so that Democrats across the state do not feel like they are so siloed in the work that they're doing. And that's a constant, really, it's communicating, and it's having a good team of people around you to make sure that there's follow-up that's happening. When I was in Tarrant County talking to Lon Burnham and Carol at their Arlington Democrats meeting, they're looking for someone to help them do some data entry from the last election cycle. Well, then I talked to Hunter.
Still.
Yeah, and I talked to Hunter over in at the Tarrant County Young Dems, and he said, I'll do that work if we'll pay, paying him $15 an hour to do it. It's like making those connections so that we continue to do work around the state, but it's also building relationships while I'm doing this. So people know that, like, the reason I have this kind of support in Harris County from elected officials, from donors, from former employees, from activists is all because this is how I believe we do the work and approach the work as the collaborative approach, and then making sure we take that out to the rest of the state as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, you mentioned, suburban, rural, urban counties. I know, I mean, from my experience, we're working with smaller counties from the County Chairs Association. The needs of the smaller counties where you can have a CEC meeting around your dining room table
Mhm.
versus 400 or more in Harris or Dallas County, there's a huge difference.
Mm.
And I had the privilege of working a little bit with Darlene Ewing up here in Dallas County and Carol Donovan after her. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my impression from working with Dallas County, and I think Harris County is probably that much different, is You don't need that much help from the state party, and a lot of the time you just like them to stay out of the way.
So I actually don't agree with that.
Okay.
My
Well, I'd
experience.
like to finish the thought though
Oh,
that
sorry.
yeah, that contrast with the smaller counties who help, it's like we can't really give them that much money usually, but name the kind of help that we could offer them, and they'll be more than happy to get it. Uh, Sometimes if they even knew who to talk to. And the suburban counties like Fort Bend, Williamson, Collin, Denton were a little bit different. Population, up in the high six figures, low seven figures, trending purple, if not purple already, and it's a different set of challenges and circumstances that we have to deal with than either the large or small. So it's I mean, the long way around of saying the different counties have different kinds of needs, although there are some needs that are shared by all of them. So could you go into a little more depth on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely correct that every county has different needs. I think one of the things we need to talk about in our assessment is figuring out where counties are and what they need, recognizing that even if Harris County is the largest county in the state, when I was party chair, I worked collaboratively with the state party. They were a resource, they were a thought partner. Um, and so they helped me build program and made sure that we ran the
Okay.
most robust vote by mail program we could possibly run because we worked hand in hand to make sure we could raise those dollars to do it. And we're hitting the target universe that we needed to hit. So I think there's every county absolutely has different needs. One of the things going back to Kay, what I think I love that she does, and I think that we should actually implement this for different different sizes of county parties. She does office hours so that you
Oh
can come
yeah.
and talk to her and if you have any questions. But I think there should be office hours for different size counties so they can come in because you are absolutely right. There are different needs for each county. But I think there's a way for the state party and the county parties to be very collaborative in the work that they're doing. I don't think
Mm,
the state party has to stay out of the way. I don't think the county parties, should stay out of the way either. I think they should have honest conversations about the work that they're doing so that because the reality is also every county party chair has different strengths and weaknesses, right?
mhm.
So working with them individually, because they're not going to have like Cardall and I both, you know, have very different experiences running different, very large parties. I think we could definitely benefit from each other, but we don't have the exact same strengths and weaknesses. So I think it'd be good
Right.
for us to have a more collaborative relationship. So I think it's the state party can help set up and navigate those conversations or facilitate those conversations because I do think, there's every county party has different needs. Some of the smaller ones that I've talked to, their needs are radically different. But what I found in these conversations, it's not just about the money. It's about
Oh yeah.
a thought partner and having someone who, talking to Richard Gonzalez about his bylaws down in Hidalgo County and what those bylaws look like.
Fun.
As the Harris County chair, we've been through decades of bylaws. They're very
Mhm.
long. Uh, and, I have very strong opinions about the bylaws that I think are good and bad. And just helping him through that process is something that you can offer to county parties that doesn't have to be a financial resource.
Right.
Mhm. And also talking to different people about trainings and making sure that we have regional trainings that are happening that are in-person trainings. And that's something that county parties can help with. If the state party were to say to me, we need some trainings in some surrounding counties for some band trainings or for some organizing trainings or for some block walking trainings or whatever it may be. We had people in Harris County talking to a precinct chair named Alan Gutman, who's he's got a group of people that they're willing to go to other counties to do some trainings. So it's also figuring out ways to support the other county parties. I think that's a really good role that the state party could help facilitate those conversations.
Yeah, so I'm kind of hearing in some of your answers here a real focus on collaboration, uh, not just, vertically through the state party. I mean, you mentioned your work in Harris County from, working with on the ground activists all the way up through federal candidates and donors, as well as kind of across the party structure, across the counties of various size. So, that kind of gets into my next question, and it deals just with the dynamics of being in a leadership position like this. I think I mentioned to you before that you sat in the hot seat leading Harris County, and everybody I've talked to who've had the experience has said that agreed with me that you don't know what the job is like until you've done it. So, uh, everybody I talked to had something good to say about you. I didn't really have any luck finding any people to say anything negative about you, which is unusual in politics. So I was wondering if you might talk a little bit about some of your bigger challenges as Harris County Chair. Um, Problem people. You don't have to name them. You know, that's one way to look at it. But some of your biggest challenges and how you handle them.
Yeah, so I think being a party chair and being in leadership, these are not it's an ever-changing role and responsibility as well. And I do think I learned a lot from being the Harris County Democratic Party chair. When I first got there, even though I had done work around the county, and done coordinated campaign work outside of the party for 5 cycles before I was party chair, and my mom was a party chair and I was a precinct chair, I absolutely did not know what the job was going to be like until I got there. 1,000%. Uh,
Right.
when I showed up in the party office the first day after I got elected, and one of the women who had run against me for party chair was on staff at the time. She was the operations manager. And
Oh,
we,
fun.
yes, and we had a staff of a couple people there. I showed up at the office and I had no idea what to do. So I called two of my friends who had helped me on the campaign and said, "Can you come down here, please, and volunteer and help me figure out what I'm doing because I'm not exactly sure what I'm doing right now." And so I think part of it is building a team that can help you put together programs. But it did take me a second. And when I got down to the party office, our office was a very large office that had a couple employees, a lot of empty space. And so one of the first things I did was also bring in Battleground Texas and Swing Left and the Texas Democratic Party, for their organizers to come work out of our office because I wanted our office to be a central hub of activities. Because to me, the Democratic Party is a thriving community, and I love the energy that can be when you put a bunch of volunteers who are like-minded into a room, or like volunteers, or operatives or staff, whatever. I like having that kind of energy in the room. And so that's one of the second things I did after calling my two friends to come down. um and so, some of this was learning, trial by error. I also started doing weekly staff meetings immediately. And
Mhm.
at first tried to include Battleground Texas and Swing Left and TDP into my staff meetings. And they were like, "Okay, you've gone too far now." And I said, "Okay, okay." Um, but some of it is just, some of this is like learning how to navigate people. This is the party is
Mm.
all about people and about
Right.
building relationships. And you have friends that you and people that you work with because you've been in the trenches together. And there are people you work with that sometimes the personalities don't mix and you just chop it up. I mean, that just happens. That's the world that we live in. But I do think one of the things I learned early on also was the strength of my steering committee. So the Harris County Democratic Party, through its
Mhm.
bylaws, has a steering committee, which is set up basically the leadership of the CEC.
Mm.
And when I first met with the steering committee, I didn't understand the purpose of the steering committee or why we even had one. So I did have to learn through some history lessons from our former party chair, Jerry Bernberg, about why we had the steering committee. And I learned
Mm.
very quickly that the best way to actually have good CEC meetings and to have good positive resolutions that came out of them, and good conversations out of our primary committees, was to have great conversations with the steering committee and have them be engaged in the process so that
Mm.
there was nothing that I ever did at the party that I did by myself. It was always with a team of people, whether it be the staff or the steering committee. Early on, I don't even remember what it was. I remember early on trying to make a change to some bylaws through the steering committee without having worked the process because I didn't really understand the resolutions process, the
Mm.
bylaws process. I just kind of the rules committee at the local party. And I thought, well, we just need to make a few changes here because these bylaws are a little clunky. I learned very quickly that's not how you make change at parties, and that is working through the committee system. But once trust the committee system and put in committee chairs that you trust and you share, values and are like-minded. That's how you actually you strengthen the party by doing that work together. Um, so that was one of the things that I had to figure out. Another thing I'll tell you is that I had an elected official in 2018 or a candidate who's running for office who had this program that he really wanted me to implement. And I didn't understand the program. I didn't think it was best practices.
Mhm.
Coming from a campaign background, it wasn't direct voter contact. I didn't understand why I would be helping facilitate social hours for candidates and precinct chairs to do work together and build, bags for block walks. I just didn't understand the purpose of it. But I went out on a limb and trusted him. Well, first I said no. And then he and I went round and round, and I said, I'm going to trust you because you trust me with your coordinated campaign dollars. So I'm going to trust you with this program. And, we're now talking 7 years later, and the precinct chairs that worked with the elected officials to create those block walking bags and to do the precinct chair ground game, they're still friends. They still talk to each other. It helped build a community at the party, but it took me, sometimes you get some very strong ideas and, very fixed in your ways. And it took me having some conversations and then seeing it enact and realize that sometimes you have to put faith in other people. And that's how you build teams, is by trusting your team members. And to me, the candidates who run for office were part of my team in 2018 and 20. The coordinated campaign was, the coordinated candidates were the team that we worked side by side with the precinct chairs and the CEC and the other elected officials that weren't on the ballot and donors. Us doing the work together is how we won in Harris County. And to me, that's kind of the whole activity, and everything we're working on right now at the party is to get us back to a team mentality where we're all on the same team.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree that that's not how the SDEC feels right now.
That's very clear in conversations I've had. Granted, I've probably talked to 90% of the SDEC.
Mm.
There are some who, there are strengths and the things they think the party's doing well, but I have talked to a lot of SDEC members that feel like they're kind of left on the sidelines right now, sitting in the benches with not really sure what the plan is. And I do think that, I'd like to reimagine the SDEC. I'd like to reimagine convention. I'd like to take a step back and say, do we have the right committees? Do we have the right chairs right now? Do we have
Amen.
people
Yes.
on the committees? I mean,
Mhm.
this is radical. What I'd love to do is create a retreat format where we could invite all of the SDC members to spend a weekend together, not just doing, the regular meetings, but actually sit down and have facilitated conversations about what is the role of the SDC and how do we make sure that everyone around the SDC feels like they're a part of the conversation and that their strengths are being best utilized. So that when you have someone from Fort Bend who's a CPA and he's on the finance committee, he understands why he's on the finance committee and the purpose of the finance committee.
Right. I think the most common complaint I still hear from people on the SDEC is the committees, and I'm sure you've heard this too, the committees don't really have that much input to what actually happens. If we get consulted, it's like sometimes after the fact. And I mean, but my first experience on the SDEC with the messaging and community and messaging and campaign committee is, go down to Austin, whatever, sit for an hour for a briefing from staff, and that was it. It's like, what am I doing here? There's a lot of wasted talent, I think, on the SDC.
Well, one of
Uh,
the first things I did when I got, the first couple of weeks of becoming the Harris County Democratic Party chair, I created 3 ad hoc committees. It was the AAPI committee,
mm,
the African American committee, and the Latino committee. Because what I wanted to happen was to bring more people into the party and figure out ways to strengthen our relationships and improve the work the party was doing. Dexter McCoy out of Fort Bend was on that committee. Christian Menifee was on that committee. People that are now rising stars in the Texas Democratic Party were on these committees. And the thing that was so amazing is committees can be a very powerful tool where you
right.
can create not only great programming, but also create relationships so that people feel like they're a part of something together and they have a new support system and a new network of people. Um, and I do think that that's the purpose of, in my mind, that's the purpose of committees. So what I want to, pose to the SDC is that what they feel like their committee does. And if
Mhm.
so, that's great. Let's make it, so that everyone on the committee feels that way. If you don't feel that way, let's figure out why and how to make the committee stronger.
Right. And I think one of the bigger problems, from my perspective, is, and you find this even among party activists, is I don't think there is a consensus really on the role of the state party and what it really ought to be doing and what it's good at, especially in contrast to, the Democratic National Committee, the county parties, the alphabet soup of other organizations. It's Yeah, without that consensus, it's hard to really agree on what program should we be doing. I mean, take something as simple as voter registration. After the 2020 election, Chairman Hinojosa says, let's make a priority of voter registration. 2 years ago, that was changed. We were going to let Battleground Texas do it. Well, there's a lot of people not very happy about that because Battleground Texas wanted to register everybody, not just Democrats. So that's kind of a reflection on, the a fundamental problem I think that we have. In that, yeah, you said earlier that you think the goal of the party is to elect Democrats. That's very basic. Uh, I think the House Democratic Campaign Committee, the Senatorial Committee, the DCCC would all agree that that's what they're trying to do. Where in your mind does the state party fit into all of that, and how would you go about building a consensus around that mission?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I do think we have to kind of remind ourselves that of all the organizations you just mentioned, when you go into a voting booth, the only organization you get to vote for is the Democratic Party.
That's a good point.
Right. And so there's tons of organizations that do a lot of great work across the state. I think recognizing that there are a lot of great organizations that do amazing work and figuring out when you can partner with them when it's appropriate. But I do think at the end of the day, people go into a voting booth and they pick a team, and I want them to pick our team, which means I think we need to build trust back in the team. And so I think building trust back requires us being year-round involved in communities around the state. I think it means us really digging into our messaging and our branding and figuring out, why did we miss the mark this last election cycle? Why did we not turn out as many Democrats as we wanted to? I think we need to have those conversations in order to start building trust back. And then I think that we also need to build really an army around the state of volunteers, empower our volunteers, and hire staff around the state to make sure that we are building that trust back in communities all across the state. I think that there is a lot of great work that's happening outside the party. Recognizing the Battleground Texas is going to focus in South Texas with Project Bravo on doing voter registration in South Texas to turn out more Democrats. And their focus is, turning out more Democrats in South Texas. So I think that's a great thing that they're doing. What I think is TDP should be a great partner to them as they do that work, figuring out how to help them augment their work and amplify their work. When we're talking about messaging, and I'm gonna come back to your party question, but when we're talking about
Mhm.
messaging, I know that there's a group that's currently now raising a lot of money, the six figures, to do deep messaging research about Democratic Party brand and what it means to be a Democrat. I want to collaborate with them because they're raising the money to do it. Doesn't mean that the party has to duplicate efforts, but we should legally and compliantly share that information
So was that in Texas or nationwide?
in Texas.
Oh, good.
Yeah, in Texas. But I think there are things that the party should be focused on. I think we should be focused on building party infrastructure. We should be focused on regionalizing the party and making sure that all across the state, we do not have county chairs and
Mm,
precinct chairs who feel like they're on a separate island from the party. We should be
right.
communicating with them on a regular basis. Some of it is fixing our communication streams. Some of it is meeting with them to figure out what exactly they want to see from the state party. Is it better messaging? Is it better, communications guidelines, whatever it is, and figuring that out. I think the voter file is something we can, with the state party controls, we need to make sure that we're working with people around the state to constantly be updating the voter file because we are only as strong as our data. And I've heard people around the state say they don't even use the voter file. They just go to the elections administrator to get their list of voters. And to me, that is something we have to fix. And that is a 100% a party operation and something the party should work on fixing. Recruiting candidates to make sure we have great candidates running up and down the ballot. When I was in Brazos County talking to Judy, and meeting with the A&M Democrats and talking about their state rep candidate who ran last time, making sure that their state rep candidate runs again this time. He worked with the A&M Democrats to do block walks every weekend last cycle. Let's make sure that he's running again, and make sure in Tarrant County, we have a county judge that's going to run. We protect the county commissioner, and we also uh, we want to flip it to a 3-2, right, in Tarrant County. So it's really, some of that to me is party infrastructure. How do we make sure that we're all working together towards common goals? And some of that that's why I say creating an electoral plan. I think the party should be working on creating an electoral plan 26, 28, 30, and 32. And we should use 26 as a year, as a building year, and hit certain benchmarks across the state to make sure that, to me, I haven't looked at any numbers for this analysis. This is just purely anecdotal, having conversations in Tarrant County and Brazos County. To me, those could potentially be races that we focus on to drive up turnout in some of those areas, while we're also working in, major metros, because they have lots of grounds with Democrats as well. So how do we make sure that our elected officials are focused on increasing turnout in their areas as well?
Right. Okay. That sounds pretty comprehensive.
Yeah.
Uh, one of
The
the
other thing I
things,
will add is making sure, coming back to this conversation of county party chairs,
right,
making sure that county party chairs have what they need to be successful. And we've already talked about that's different for every county party chair. But I
right,
think the state party should be very helpful in that conversation. That's something that we can do to help strengthen the democratic infrastructure.
right. Yeah, I agree completely. In talking with some of my colleagues, both voting and non-voting in this particular race, the um, the consensus seems to be that the top three candidates are you, Patsy, and Kendall. I have heard at least one of them express the idea that, gosh, I wish we could just take the three of them in a blender and come up with one candidate, because you all have your particular strengths and maybe, liabilities as composed compared to some others. Um, I mean, without knocking any of the candidates, Patsy doesn't have the depth of experience in the party, although she has an extensive fundraising resume. Kendall is really known within the party and kind of knows, where the bodies are buried within the state party right now. But he's never led a large organization. In contrast, you haven't been working with as much within the state party, but you're the only one who has run a large, specifically Democratic organization. So it's, kind of a contrast there. I guess what I'm kind of leading up to is that there are, people look for different kinds of things in a leader, in a state party leader. For those who really want to, the best fundraiser we can get, I think that would probably be Patsy. Um, for those who want a, more of a, I'd say a cheerleader backslapping type, probably Kendall. For those who are not so concerned about that, but would maybe favor somebody with a stronger track record of actually doing it. One comment I heard is that Kendall talks a lot about doing it. Lillie says, well, we did this in Harris County. So kind of leading up to the answer to that question, when you look at yourself, introvert or extrovert?
I'm a mix for sure.
Okay, fair
Yeah.
enough. So, yeah, and I ran into this in myself a lot when I was county chair. There are people who think, we want the county chair, we want the chair, state chair, whoever, to be the public face of the party. They need to rile up the troops, rah, 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 and all of that. And it's hard to find all of that in one person. Uh, and from my way of thinking, the public face of the party if you see who's actually quoted in the press, it's actually the candidates and office holders.
Agreed.
Name say the last time you actually heard, the chair of the Republican Party in Texas say anything. What did he say? Who even is it? How many people can answer that? So, I guess from your viewpoint, hard to be objective considering one's own personality. But what kind of cheer do you think we really need right now in terms of that cheerleader fundraiser versus more competent technocrat, for want of a better word?
Yeah, I mean, I jumped into this race for those very reasons that you just described. I watched the last candidate forum, the Progressive Caucus forum, and watched it, and I thought that the candidates each have their own strengths and weaknesses, but at the end of the day, if money were to fix our problems in Democratic elections, Kamala Harris would be president and Colin Allred would be our United States Senator. So
Fair
I think it's
enough.
not just about the money. You have to be able to build a coalition and build a winning plan to win. It's not just about who you know and how much work you've done in the past, because if that were the case, state party would be much more powerful than it is today. So I think it really is looking at being able to have an honest conversation about where we are in the state of Texas and where we need to go makes me a little bit different. I'm very aware of my strengths and weaknesses. I recognize, I spend a lot of time. I went back to get my master's later in life because I wanted to be a better manager and a better team builder, because I think the better teams you have, the more high producing the teams will be. And I don't think it's about having a cheerleader at the end of the day, because I think there are a lot of great Democratic elected officials that can be great cheerleaders. We have a lot of them that are elected in place already today, but I think it's about creating a strategy to win and then building a coalition around that strategy to win. So I think I kind of bring a little bit of everything to the table. I do love Kendall speaking at events. I think he does. He's got the pep in
He
the
does. He does.
and I absolutely love it. But at the end of the day, I don't think that's how you win campaigns. I think you win
Mm.
campaigns from really hard work and really good strategy. And so I think that's what the state party needs to look for, is someone who's
Okay.
going to do the work with a winning track record.
Okay. Thanks. I know we're just about out of time. I'd like to just bring up one other point and ask you about one other thing before we wrap up. You had mentioned that you had waited, pretty late to get into the race. I heard through the grapevine, and you can comment on this as you wish, that I mean everybody knows Beto was thinking about getting in,
Mhm.
and I had heard that you had been waiting to see if he was going to get in, and when he decided not to, that's when you decided to jump in. So I see you nodding your head. That's pretty much true, huh?
Mhm.
Okay. Thanks for confirming that because there are
Oh,
people I know who had that question.
Oh, I
Um,
absolutely did wait because I wanted to see where he ended up, because I think that Beto is a great speaker. And if you want a great cheerleader, I think he's phenomenal at bringing hope to Texas Democrats. And I also think he has a great fundraising network. So I was really waiting to see where he ended up.
yeah, I mean, just speaking from my viewpoint in practical politics, if he got in, he'd have it sewn up. I mean, there's no reason to run against him. Uh, the other thing that I'd like you to comment on, if you would please, is one of the things that I did hear about you is when you were chair in Harris County, you had a sign above your door, and it went something like, unless you've been in the ring getting your ass kicked, I'm not interested in your opinion.
That is 1,000% not what it said.
So what was it?
It was in the arena. It's
In
a
the arena, okay.
quote by Theodore Roosevelt. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And it's about um the most important thing about this work is getting into the fight.
Okay.
And people can sit on the sidelines and have all kinds of opinions, but the people who actually get into the arena and get into the fight, and whether that be through running for office, whether that be volunteering, whether that be making a donation, the most important part is that people get into the arena and fight.
Okay. So that came from Teddy Roosevelt then. I'll have to go look it up 'cause
I'll send it
I,
to you.
I think I actually remember seeing it at one time or another from Roosevelt. Okay. Well, I was curious about that, but it does provide another illustration, another angle to how you approach being county chair.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this is a team sport and we need everybody in the arena fighting to make sure that we actually start winning elections statewide.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I have very much enjoyed this chance to talk with you one-on-one again. I hope you found it worthwhile, and I hope those folks who have taken the time to watch through to the end here, have found it helpful in them making their choice about who they want to support. So thanks again,
Thank you.
Lily.
Thank you for doing this. I've been saying like nonstop that 60 seconds is not enough. We have a very serious issue in front of us. The state running the state party is a very serious endeavor, and we need to make sure that we're really thinking about who you want running the state party and not just a talking point about, a joke or, as you said, a cheerleader, or not just a talking point of how much money you can raise, but an actual strategy to bring people together to win elections. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Well, thanks again. I'll see you in Austin the end of the month.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Take care.